There we go. All right, so welcome everybody. This is our debriefing of the 2022 USARA National Championship. And if you've got any questions as we go along, pop those down in the chat box and we'll make sure that we get to those. I've got a lot of questions, so hopefully I'll hit some of what you've got. And we're going to be speaking predominantly with Amanda Bohley, who raced with the #2 co-ed and overall team Bend Racing. And we're also going to be speaking with the 3 women that made up the Rootstock Racing team, Abby Perkis, Nikki Driscoll, and Karen Delaney. And they were the champions within the all women's category. So we're going to start off by talking with Amanda from Bend Racing. And Amanda, one of the first things I'd like for you to do, because I think it's pretty relevant to some of the questions we've got for you, is tell people about your AR bio. How long have you been racing? What kind of races have you done? That sort of thing before you came into nationals.
So I did my first true adventure race. It was the Shenandoah Epic in 2021. Prior to that, I have done just some foot row gains, but that was my first adventure race, and I got the bug. And since then, I've done the Shenandoah Epic again. I raced Rootstock Stockville last year. I'm going to be there again this year. And then I did Endless Mountains this year, kind of on a whim. I found out like 5 weeks before, I think. So I guess that's kind of my style. Last minute. And just
Endless Mountains was less of a whim than nationals then.
Yeah, it was less of a whim than at nationals, that's for sure. Yeah, I guess that's true. 5 weeks is a lot more time than 5 days or 6 days. Yeah.
Right. So now Endless Mountains, I know that you raced with a co-ed team. Were there 3 other guys on your team at the start or 2?
There were 3 at the start, and then 2 other guys and I finished.
Right. So pretty shortly into Endless Mountains, one of your teammates became ill and wasn't, or injured, one of the 2, and wasn't able to keep going, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. But then you all went. And so how long were you out there for Endless Mountains?
Oh, the whole time except 8 minutes.
You got your money's worth at Endless Mountains.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then you find out that Bend Racing, the woman that they were going to be racing with, is injured. Someone tags you in a Facebook post and says, pick up Amanda, right? And this is how you got hooked up with Bend?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. And so you raced with Jason and Max from the Bend Racing team. So how did that initial conversation go when they reached out to you and said, hey, let's talk about racing?
It was at first discussing like their expectations and kind of my background. And obviously I don't have the background that is at the caliber of their expectations or their race history. But I don't know. I tried to vocalize that I am a very greedy person, and that if I was given the opportunity, that there would be nothing left of me after I crossed the finish line. That was the assurance that I gave them, and they had no idea whether or not that would have been true.
And so what did they communicate to you were their expectations?
Their expectations was to be borderline uncomfortable the entire time, and they wanted to race, so it was important to find somebody, and they had some other people locally and another person that were interested, but they didn't seem to be very strong mountain bikers. And that, of course, as you know now, like that was huge for that race. So that kind of got me in there. But then the expectation was, 1, they wanted to race. 2, they wanted to push and be as comfortable as possible for as long as possible. And 3, they always want a podium. So.
As uncomfortable as possible?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So
without crossing the line, like always pushing yourself to that point, I guess, without crossing the line of never coming back.
So it seems to me like this is a really important like first takeaway for everybody from the successful finish that you had with this team? We so often hear teams say, we just want to have fun and we just want to finish. And that's a perfectly viable goal if it's your real goal. If it's not your real goal, you need to be super honest about what is your real goal. Because I think a lot of times when we see teams break down, it's because they said they weren't really competitive and didn't want to win, but then they got out there and pushed like they were really competitive and wanted to win. So Ben was very frank with you and said, we're not out there to have fun necessarily. That's a nice, if we can, that's great, but expect to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were very upfront about that. Yep.
Yeah. Which is, and you were good with that.
Yeah. I've been just waiting for an opportunity to leave it all out there. Like, and I got it for sure.
Okay. So you had 6 days notice. What did you do to try to get prepared?
Oh man. I have to give a shout out to Annie Lang and Burf Barf, because had she not been driving out, I would have had just a logistics nightmare to get everything prepared. But from the moment that I committed with Jason, Annie was leaving the next day. So I basically was in a frenzy for about 24 hours to get my stuff down to Columbus for Annie to take out for me. But thankfully, like from previous races, and like, I've never done a nationals, but I've done a 24-hour race, and I usually keep pretty good notes about the things that I pack and all of that. And then like, another thing to note was that racing with Ben was a completely different style of racing than I normally would have done, even when it came down to what I was packing. So they kept everything lightweight. So I just threw pretty much everything I owned in my gear bin, and I'll sort it out in California. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And
So
now
thank you, Annie.
You've raced with Burf Barf before this race, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So Samantha Keck asked, what was your endurance sport background outside of AR?
So a little bit of everything, like 50Ks. I've done some triathlons. Kind of what propelled me into just this arena a little bit was like, I took a bicycle trip across the country, and it just like opened my world up. I had no experience. I just hopped on a bike with a old tent and just saw what happened. But you know, it really opened me up to like all the things available out there, and just like just being outdoors and loving to be outdoors and being uncomfortable and finding some comfort in that uncomfortableness, if that makes any sense. So
yeah, good deal. So how have you trained and honed your skills mountain biking? Because there was some technical mountain biking on this course, and you obviously kept up just fine. How have you improved those skills?
So I actually was a mountain biker before getting into AR. So AR just kind of fit the mold for me as far as although I'm a terrible paddler, but I love to trail run, love to mountain bike, but I learned how to ride at one of the tougher courses in Ohio, and I'm so thankful that it wasn't like just hero dirt or anything like that. So like, I enjoy the rocks, I enjoy the routes, I enjoy the climbs. And I think all of those things served me well. So like, my biggest advice to somebody just getting into mountain biking, like, yeah, the machine pack trails are really nice, but sometimes you got to get out there and do some harder stuff, and it just makes you more comfortable on your bike. The crazier terrain you're in, and you can be comfortable in that, then it just makes all the other stuff so easy and flowy.
Okay, so you go out there, and the very first thing that you do in this race after the gun goes off is climb to the top of Mammoth Mountain at elevation.
That was the most miserable I was for the whole, 27 hours. I don't know if you guys know anything about Max, who was on our team, but he's like a renowned ultra runner, mountain runner. So if it were up to him, he would have sprint up there, I'm pretty sure. And also I had some, I'm sure everybody did, the altitude just instantly, like my heart rate was sky high. And so for that whole hour and however long it took up there, I was just miserable the whole time, pushing a pace that was faster than I would normally go and just having a hard time breathing. But it was all good once I got on the bike.
Yeah, so you're from Ohio, you live in Ohio, right? A few hundred feet
Yeah.
above sea level.
Yep, about there.
And so when did you get out to California?
Thursday?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I met
so,
him like a half hour before check-in. Yep.
So you had like 14 hours to acclimate.
Yeah, and we did a short run and a short ride like right before check-in just to kind of see how it was going to affect us. And it was like instant for me. I felt it instantly. And I'm sure almost everybody out there did, unless they were able to get out earlier or had some other time to acclimate. But yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah, so was there anything that you did in particular that helped alleviate that?
Just deep breaths and knowing that the pain was temporary, like knowing that like you could see where you had to go. It was at the top of the mountain, and just like staying focused on like, this isn't going to last long. Just take some deep breaths and just keep moving.
Okay. And so did they have you on tow going up the mountain?
Going up the mountain, they did. Yep.
Okay. And so did you all pretty much, I mean, you wouldn't have been on tow obviously on that first bike because you're biking down the mountain, but other than those sort of downhill bikes, did you all have someone on tow pretty much the whole time?
I not the whole time, but whenever there was the second large bike, that like going up that pass, we were on tow, and we did I don't know how to even describe it. We had two tows between the three of us in some moments. So like we were all just in a line trying to stay as close together as possible, either for drafting or just keeping us close. Cause I would fall back and then tow up, fall back, tow up. And then I don't know if anybody ever has done this, but we had it where the front bike was towing the middle bike, towing the rear bike for a portion of that huge bike section.
And so have you ever raced on tow before?
I haven't. I've towed before, but I've never been on tow before.
How was that?
I mean, you still work, you're still working really hard. I wasn't surprised by that because the people I have towed before, like they let me know that, but it was just like a real, like, it was like, yeah, you're still doing it all. You're just getting a little propulsion, I guess. But yeah, like both of them are very strong in all of the disciplines. And so we had goals from the very beginning that like whatever we had to do to make the three of us move as efficiently and fast as possible, like check your egos at the door. We don't care. It's the three of us, and however the three of us are going to move the fastest is how we need to move. So I was good with it.
Yeah. And eventually, trust me, you come to love the tow. And so at first it's a little humbling, but over time you're like, where's my toe? Where's my toe? And it's true that to me, I don't work any harder in a race than when I'm on tow, because they're working so hard to pull you, and you want to try to alleviate the burden that you are on them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're still taking those steps, and you're still doing those pedal strokes, and you're still doing it all. You're just getting a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. And so tell me about, I witnessed your team in a few transitions, only very briefly. And so I know what their strategy is in part. I want to hear what your observations were about transition areas and how those impacted your movement and your placement.
Yeah, the transitions were treated just like everything else, fast and as efficient as possible. So we kind of talked about, we didn't necessarily split up roll by rolls, but it was just kind of like a natural inclination. So like they were mapping, one person was reading rules of travel, one person was plotting and napping, and then I was not napping. Mapping, wanting to nap probably, but and then I would go filter water. We race primarily on their 4-hour fuel, so I was filling up those bottles. So like the second they were done mapping, we had everything that we needed, and we could just get out of there as fast as possible. So also what helped make us fast was one, keeping food really simple. I wrote a couple things down. Keeping food really simple, and just knowing your role, for me, it was like, don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Like, you know what to do, like know your role. And then We also kept clothes and everything super simple. So I wore the same outfit and the same shoes for the whole 24 hours. Like we had flats on our bikes so that we didn't have to take time to change shoes out. And then also in each gear bin, we had kind of a list. It would say at TA2, here's the things that we need to do. TA whatever. So at every TA, we had specifically what needed to be done according to how our gear bin was organized.
Okay. And so had you ever used their 4-hour fuel before?
Well, technically, yes. So once I found out I was racing with them, Laura Comtois had one, and I was like, they want to use it for the whole race. And she gave it to me so that I could at least test it on my stomach. And it worked out great. Like I had no issues whatsoever. And it was surprisingly like satiating too.
Okay, so why don't you tell people who aren't familiar with what this is, what it is and how you utilized it?
So it is their own proprietary blend of, they have multiple different flavors, but it's a powdered form fuel that you mix with water, and it's good to sustain you for like 4 hours of activity. They call it 4-hour fuel. And you just put half of it in a, I would say no smaller than 16 ounces. It could get pretty thick. 16 ounces, put water in it, mix it up, pour the other half in it, mix water and mix it up. And you just shake it like really rigorously.
And so can it come through your bladder, or you're drinking this out of a bottle?
Bottles. I wouldn't think it would come through a bladder. Maybe you would have to really thin it out, I would think. We just use bottles.
So did you have something on your pack that you could put bottles in on the front so it would be accessible?
Yep. So I had a bladder and just a bottle holder in the front. So I would from my water through the bladder, and then the 4-hour fuel just from a bottle.
So then did you eat any real food?
At transition areas, like oatmeal cream pies or whatever, like, and I had stowed away some like actual food for me because I wasn't sure, like, like 12, 15 hours in, like how my stomach would be after just using that, but I never really had to get to it. And then there were a couple legs where we had a 4-hour fuel, and then we needed some just snacks to supplement the other 2 hours that we were out there. Like there were 2 6-hour legs, I think. So, but other than, yeah, we had like a little bit of comfort food at TAs and like an oatmeal cream pie to just shove down. And then one of the TAs had ramen that we took on the way into the canyon.
Yeah, I heard Jason Magnus refer to like food, what we think of as real food, not the drink, as emotional comfort food.
Yeah, that's how
he called it.
Yep.
Yeah, his point was basically, you don't need any of these bars and other like real food physically. It's just the emotional comfort of having it is what he was referring to.
And it was nice to like chew something just after all day, just the motion of like chewing felt like, oh, food. But again, I never felt like depleted or anything throughout the whole day, which I was, not that I didn't trust what they were telling me about it, but I just know the way that I race. Like I'm a big snacker usually, but like I didn't have that. And I don't, maybe because we were pushing so hard and I didn't really have time to think about it, or I don't know.
So the boats that you all had, and there were 2 different paddling legs, a couple 3 hours each. And the boats you all were provided were a tandem and a solo kayak. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you all had those tethered together. Which boat were you in?
It switched a little bit. So we started off with Jason just in the single and Max and I in the tandem until we got to the lake. And then when we got to the lake, they put me in the single and tethered me to them. And then for the last leg, we just put Jason. That last paddle was kind of like, it was a little wild. Water was moving really fast. So Max and I were in the tandem and Jason just paddled single.
Not tethered. So what was the rationale for changing up the tether going into the lake? Did you all just try it one way and then you thought it might work better a different way, or was that the plan?
I think that they were counting on, like Jason especially is a super strong paddler. So they were trying to get as much power in the front and then me just kind of steer and paddle along in the back.
Okay.
But though I don't know, it didn't seem like we were, I mean, like we were efficient, but it didn't seem that like we were like flying in the water at any time.
I don't think anyone felt like they were flying. For what
That
it's
wind
worth.
was crazy.
It was a little windy, right? So I'm curious how you were able to eat. Like if you're all three in a canoe, it's easy enough to take turns and rotate through eating. How were you able to keep taking in calories, especially if you're having to use a bottle? You know, if you have a bar or something, you can just kind of keep chewing, but was it difficult to try to keep bringing in nutrition?
No, I mean, I just had that 4-hour fuel bottle just like right in between my legs, and then, you know, every little bit just squirt some in. Like if you take a big gulp of it, like it'll get you through like a half hour. And
Okay.
so, and that's another thing we did or we tried to do is like, you know, gauging time and calling out like, hey, you should be like halfway through that bottle by now. And if you're not, then catch up, or, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to move on just generally. Any other lessons, takeaways that you learned from your experience with this team that you want to pass on?
Gosh, I learned so much. One of the big things, it's pretty simple, but ounces equals minutes. I tend to race on the heavier side. I don't know. I like creature comforts, or like, what if it gets, you know, -10? I need to have a puffy coat or whatever. But this race was the lightest I've traveled in any race, even races less than like 12 hours. So one of the biggest things that I learned is that like, especially in a race this long, is no matter what you're going through, it's only for a short period of time. Like when you think about like all of the things that could possibly happen and that might make you uncomfortable, like, yeah, that might happen, but you're not going to be uncomfortable for very long. That was the kind of the mentality that they had, but also I tend to have a little bit, but like I've never really applied it to the way that I pack in my gear. So definitely will take that with me. And then this is more personal, especially with my goals in adventure racing. Like I want to race at a high level, is that I need to always be ready. So like after Endless Mountains, I took some time off. And lately I have Stockville coming up. So I've just been doing a lot of miles with heavy packs on the incline, on the treadmill, or just long hikes. And so like me physically and like condition wise, like had I known I was racing nationals, I would have been in way better shape. Like, so for me, it was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay to take some time off, but like, if you really want to excel at a high level, and if you want to maybe find that team that is wanting to push all the time, then I need to be ready all the time, especially 6 days before nationals.
Well, I mean, you did okay.
I know, but I'm thinking maybe it wouldn't have hurt as much. Actually, like physically, I felt fine. My lungs were bad though, but
yeah. And are you pretty well recovered now?
I am. I ended up going to the doctor because I was just like hacking for days. And then they think that likely I caught some bug like right before and just pounded it into the ground for 30 hours and then went to Vegas and then didn't sleep. So I don't think I helped myself any, but I'm finally starting to come around.
Yeah, good deal. Well, congratulations. If other people have some more questions, we can circle back around to Amanda, but I want to get over to Rootstock Racing. So Rootstock is a team, and all of these women have competed at a high level and been on national championship teams as a mixed gender team. This was your first time racing on an all women's team. So Abby, why don't you tell us what went into that decision?
Yeah, Nikki and Karen and I, so the three of us are on the Rootstock roster. We have 8 or 9 people on the roster, and we've talked loosely about racing as an all-women's team for a number of years. But you know, as a full team, we've always prioritized the mixed gender division. And this year, I think our team has just been in a little bit of flux. There are fewer folks available. And as we got into the summer, we realized that there was a unique opportunity this year to kind of make good on this thing we've been throwing around. And so I think it was in July, it coalesced that the three of us would go out together. And I think we were all pretty excited about it for a variety of reasons. This year's nationals felt challenging logistically, like the thought of getting out there and it being so far from an airport and just like all of the all this coordination. And I think being able to go, the three of us, gave us a little bit of an extra boost in making the effort to get out there.
So Karen, how would you compare racing on this all women's team to your experience racing on a mixed gender team in the past?
I thought it was a lot of fun, and mostly because I felt like the other teams were just so supportive and encouraging for us. It was really just neat. I felt like the entire time we're out on the course, everybody was just kind of cheering us on. It was also interesting because I don't think any of us felt like there was one really strong person. Like you're used to having maybe a tall guy that you feel like, okay, if I get tired, he can carry my pack. Well, Abby ended up carrying my pack, and she's smaller than I am in terms of height and stuff. And so it was just neat to come in kind of all feeling fairly equal in our skills and knowing that we each have our strengths and things that we might be slightly better at, but overall very equal. And I just think it was a really different approach to any race I've done because of that.
Yeah, I've always found that when Sarah and I race together, we get a lot of support from other teams as well, which is pretty cool. So Nikki, I think you were the lead navigator for your team, is that right?
Yes.
So can you kind of talk us through I know you've navigated doing solo races before. Have you ever navigated when you all raced on a mixed gender team?
I have a few times. The last couple of years, there have been a few races where, Rootstock has, amongst our roster, a few really, really spectacular navigators, one being Brent, another being my brother, Jim. And Joel Ford used to be a great navigator for us, but he's been a little bit out of the race scene the last couple of years. So I think it was probably starting in 2019 when a bunch of our navigators were not available. And so I ended up leading nav for a couple of mixed gender teams that year at the Rootstock Two Rivers race, also up in Maine. So I got to lead nav on some mixed gender teams through the years, which was a lot of fun. And then also did a couple of solo races as well. I've done Stockville a couple of times as well, so that's been fun.
And so one of the big challenges that you all had right out of the gate with this race, so for folks who weren't there, you all got your first set of course instructions and your first set of maps, which were two twin size sheet maps, when you got on the bus headed to the start, right? So how did you all deal with divvying up and trying to process the information that you were given on the move?
Yeah, that was a new experience for me. For one, I've never worked with a map that large before. It was a little overwhelming, just the sheer size of the thing and trying to fold it up in creative ways. So it was a little challenging. What we ended up doing most of the time was Abby was in charge of reading out rules of travel, course instructions, and clues, and also the UTM plots. So she would read everything that I needed to know, and then I would be on the map plotting things or trying to match up. So particularly at the start of the race, when we got the big, huge map 1 on the bus, there was a particular rule of travel about some road that was off limits. And this really threw us for a loop because we could not find this road on the map. And all the other teams on the bus were having the same problem. We're turning around talking to everyone where is this road that they're talking about that is off limits? And lo and behold, they told us at the start line, oh yeah, don't worry about that. That's not on the map. That was for an alternative course. So that was challenging because that really threw us for a loop. We spent 20 minutes on the bus trying to find this road. But yeah, other than that little hiccup, it was definitely a little bit challenging kind of dealing with the maps, especially at that size on the bus. I wish that I had thought ahead to bring, I don't know, some sort of surface to write on. I think Bones had a little styrofoam like a cooler lid that they had brought so they could like write on it. Because I was just kind of like awkwardly putting my map up against the window and the seat in front of me to try and write on it.
So now you
but
will
we made
just
it
have
work.
2 points to plot, right?
Yeah, it wasn't too many points to plot, so that was no issue.
Yeah, okay. And so from the outset, checkpoints 1 and 2. So again, for folks who don't know, the race was set up so that transition areas had a point value. They were worth 100 points. And then you had a series of points that were already mapped for you on the map. And those were what you might think of as sort of mandatory points, but rather than being mandatory, they just had a higher point value. They were worth 50 points each. And then you had these pro points, they were called, and those were the ones that you would plot yourself, and they were worth 10 points. And so the way it was structured is, and I think you all were told this in the briefing, I didn't get to attend the briefing, but I think you all were told basically, look, this is a big course, it's point to point. There aren't a lot of options for short coursing yourself, for cutting out part of the course. The options that you have are these pro points. So unless you're planning to clear the course, you shouldn't be going after pro points. Is that basically the message you got?
Yeah. And one thing I'll add that added a little bit of challenge there is that the 2 pro points that we were able to plot on the bus were pro points within the Mammoth Mountain Bike Park. However, we did not have the trail map for the for the Mammoth Mountain Bike Park. And we did not get that trail map until that was the prologue of the race. So while we were able to plot those pro points on the big, huge topo map, we didn't have any of those trails on the map. So that was a really interesting twist in that we didn't actually get the mountain bike map until the prologue, and then we were running up Mammoth Mountain. So I pulled it out at some point while we were hiking up, but I didn't really have I was trying to look at where I was going and not trip. So I didn't actually get to look at that map until we got to the top, and we were basically had to make a quick transition onto our mountain bikes. And I had to take a quick look at that map and decide that we were going to go for those pro points, which I think we decided before we got to the top based on our time. But we were actually talking about it, whether or not we wanted to go for those pro points. And I'm very, very glad we did.
So Abby, tell us what your all's goals from the start, because obviously CPs 1 and 2 were pro points. So right off the bat, you kind of had to commit to, are we a team who thinks we're going to go out and try to clear this course or not? So what was your all's thinking? How did you set your goals going into it?
Yeah, so that for me, that was like such a hard decision. And I'm never one to say, oh, we should drop a point on the first leg of a race. But also, like, I looked at the information we had, right? We didn't have the whole course. We only had the maps for the first few legs. We didn't have any distance estimates, but we had time estimates that were given out beforehand. We had elevation estimates. And I knew that I have been kind of struggling mentally with technical travel, especially technical riding. And I knew that this was going to be a technical race, and that like Yishai, the race director, was really talking up the technicality of these 2 pro points. And I have done a number of races over the last couple of years in particular, where like that crux decision is to skip the first couple points. And strategically, you end up better in the rankings because you make that decision. And I said this to Nikki and I said this to Karen, and Nikki was like, absolutely not. We're not skipping those 2 points. I was like, oh, but I'm not sure. And so we decided essentially that, and I said at the beginning, I was like, I would put money on the fact that 3, maybe 4 teams will clear this course. And I don't think we are going to be top 3. You know, we had goals. We had set kind of A, B, and C goals for the race. And our like stretch goal was top 5. And so based on that math, I was like, I don't think we're going to clear this. And so we decided to like put that decision aside and see how long it took us to get up the mountain, because they had estimated 2 hours for the lead teams. So we were like, okay, so if we're up in 3 hours, we won't go for them. And if we're up in anywhere near 2 hours, we'll do it. And we got up in what, like an hour and a half?
Yeah, hour and a half, hour 20. It was quicker than the estimate.
So I said, okay, I guess we're going to do this. And I'm going to just put on my big girl pants and figure out how to ride technical stuff. Cause it was totally in my head. Like, I know that I have the skill set, but I've been for the last couple years just like really struggling with that. And I knew that these first like 45 minutes of the race were going to determine how I did personally. If I could stay out of my head, I knew that I would be okay. And if I couldn't, then I was going to be a disaster.
Yeah, because distance wise, it looked like it wasn't really a lot further to go get CPs 1 and 2 than it was to go around the backside of the mountain directly to CP3. The big difference was to get to CP1, you had to drop down what was mapped on their trail map as a double black diamond mountain biking trail. So that does get into your head. How did it go?
Well,
It was fine. Well, the actual double black diamond was fine. I think I walked like 15 meters of it, and we made, and Karen and Nikki, you guys may have ridden the whole thing. I'm not sure.
most of it, I think I got off for 2 very brief sections. Yeah.
Yeah, I walked a
Um,
little tiny bit.
The ironic part is, yeah, we rode the double black diamond section really well. Like we did fine with it. We were cruising down it. And then we got down into a kind of wider confluence of trails that was this like loose gravelly section. And I was just flying down it, going really fast, and got just the wheel wobble just a little bit in the soft gravel, and I flew over my handlebars and wiped out really bad. So I was actually really mad at myself because I knew that my teammates were a little like worried about the technicality of these trails. And I was like, great, I just wiped out really bad. Like that's not going to help anyone's, mental place with being on these trails. But luckily we were all fine and nobody got rattled, and we handled the rest of the trails totally fine.
And Nikki navigated them spectacularly on what sounds like was for a number of teams a pretty challenging kind of negotiation of the two maps.
Yeah, it was really hard. So what they got, folks, was this, basically think of it like a ski mountain trail map. And so it's not oriented to north, it's oriented to the face of the mountain. And the points that they got, they were given the trail intersection names for the points. So that was good, but trying to integrate that trail map with your topo map and figure out even just how you're supposed to get off this mountain and get to that waypoint at the bottom. To me, it was just a total brain twister.
It was
Yeah.
challenging. I will say that's some of the most interesting navigation I've ever had to do, because yeah, the mountain bike trail map, if anybody has seen a ski mountain map, they basically take the 3-dimensional structure of the ski mountain and like warp it and flatten it, but not in the same way that a topo map is. So it's completely like things are warped and stretched and scaled weirdly. Nothing is oriented in a direction that makes sense with your compass. It doesn't show elevation and up and down. So it was just like a very, very interesting map to navigate by.
Yeah. And you're doing this right after you've hoofed it up a mountain.
Wiped out,
and
yeah.
your
Oh
head's
yeah,
about to explode.
up at elevation, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then I want to, let's see. First, I want to pop up here a little piece of your all's tracker and show one of your route choices. Oh, hang on. Okay. So let me do a screen share. Okay, so the it's not letting me actually move it around. Okay, well, so the red here is what the race director basically puts on the map as what they consider the ideal route or the optimal route. And then the
Steph,
blue,
I don't think any of us can see
Can't
the
see it.
actual screen.
oh. Well, it says I'm sharing. What are you seeing?
I see it saying Steph Ross has started sharing or started screen sharing.
But it's just black.
Well, I wonder if it's,
Did you choose which screen you were sharing?
yeah, I did. And now I'm trying to stop share so I could try again, and it's frozen up. The whole sharing function is frozen up. I think it's probably about to crash. The sharing function is very, oh. Hey,
I'm wondering if you want one of us to try it, if I
Yeah, do you want me to pull it up?
sure.
I've just been working
yeah.
on pulling it in the background. Not knowing exactly which part you were going to try and show, but I assume it was the bike whack.
Actually, before we even got to that,
Oh,
there was
okay.
a section on the course, and I just wanted to give you all kudos on what I thought was the right route choice. It's the route I would have taken around that Inyo crater, going from CP5 to CP6. I never even really looked at, there was a route choice. You could have gone around the west side of Inyo craters between 5
Oh,
and you all
yeah.
went around the east side. The optimal route that was shown by the race director on the tracker showed it going around the west side.
Mhm.
And when I had looked at the course I would have taken, I had highlighted the east side and said, well, it looks shorter to me. And it looks like the elevation sort of equal. And what I was told was, well, yeah, but actually the west side is faster. There it is, right there. So see how your all's blue line goes to the east side, and the race director said, the west side's actually faster just because of the road conditions. And I was like, well, I don't really like that because they don't have any way of knowing that if they're not local. But I want you to know. So I went back and I looked. Number one, all of the women's teams took the east side. The two teams that took the west side, interestingly enough, were Tundra. Well, there were multiple teams who did, but among the teams who took the west side, the red route, Tundra and Bend both took that west side. And I thought, what did they know? Like, how did they know to take the west side? The east side looked shorter. All the women's teams took the east side. Well, I compared their times to your times. And I want you to know that your split from 5 to 6 was 21 minutes. Tundra's split from 5 to 6 was 27 minutes. Ben's was 27 minutes. And Naira, who also took the western route, was 28 minutes. Tower, so I thought, okay, if it's the road conditions, then it should be some local knowledge here. What did Tower do? Because they're a local team. Tower took the east side and their split was 23 minutes. So kudos to you. You obviously had a better route choice than the race director had considered.
I generally opt for the shortest route. I mean, unless the road conditions are really that different. I think in there they were all fire roads, so it was all gravel road. Like, I can't imagine that the road would have been that much better to make up for how much longer that western route was.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go over to your shortcut then that I know people want to know about.
Is that over here?
Right there.
Yeah. Nope, to the northeast of that.
Northeast.
Yeah, right in there.
Oh,
That one.
yeah, Nikki and I had looked at it on the map when we were plotting and both thought it held promise. And then we got in there and I said, absolutely not. Nikki said, no, I think we can do it. And we did.
Abby, I don't know if you can zoom in anymore, but
Yeah.
so we get to that intersection and the only way to actually get through to that CP is the marked route there in red, which is down on like some fire roads, and then it meets up with something that marked on the map maybe looked like it was paved. However, if you go north there, this trail kind of winds around and then there's a re-entrant there. And on the maps that we had, the topo maps, they did have like shading for vegetation. And so there was like light green shading and white shading. Yeah, this is not exactly what our topo map looked like, but that whole region through that re-entrant was like mostly white shaded. So I thought, okay, the vegetation is going to be pretty open. It's like 600 meters of bushwhacking with our bikes. And it saves us about 4 kilometers of riding around on, gravel, something, maybe some road. And so we kind of got into it a little bit. We had a little discussion over whether that was the smart move to do this bushwhack or whether we should ride around. And then we decided to go for it. And I didn't get a chance to go back and look at the splits and see, if it really did save us a bunch of time. I think it definitely saved us a little bit though. And, you know, with a course that didn't offer, with it being a true linear point-to-point course, there was not a lot of opportunity to make creative nav choices and take shortcuts. So finally found something that looked like, hey, we can take a shortcut here. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's super hard to tell in terms of savings of time because it was such a long leg from 15 over to 16. So you really can't draw any conclusions in terms of savings, but it's
Amanda,
certainly.
you guys did it as well, I think.
Sorry, I was just getting ready to type. So I can't speak to everybody. So we were riding with Vert at the time where we made the decision to split off and bushwhack. And we arrived at the checkpoint just as Vert arrived at the checkpoint. So it was fun nonetheless.
Yeah, and now you all went down this broad spur. So yeah, right there, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what Amanda's team did. Yeah. And you all, I think I heard that you all felt like it was pretty thick and rough going.
I thought it was going to be a liability to break my bike.
We got lucky. It was pretty open over where we did it down that reentrant.
Which
Really
is
wasn't
kind of surprising.
too bad.
Yeah, if you
'cause
pull up
generally
the
a
satellite base map,
Yeah.
yeah. If you pull up the satellite base map, it looks like the reentrants were a lot thicker and that the spur would have been kind of clear, but from the stories I've heard, it was sort of exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah, there was a lot of like thorny scrub at the beginning of it. And as Amanda said, I thought we were going to destroy our bikes. But then once we got into the reentrant proper, it was actually a lot more easy to kind of wind our way.
Okay, so how did you all set up your paddling situation?
So for the first paddle through the stream leading into Crowley Lake and then Crowley Lake, we put Abby in the single and Karen and I in the double. Just thinking that Abby's probably had the most paddling yet of us this year, having come off of Scotland and whatnot. And Abby's a really strong paddler. And we paddled separately through the stream leading into Crowley because it was very, very windy. And then once we got into Crowley Lake, we hooked up and did a paddle tow, and that worked out pretty nicely. And then on the second paddle, we actually swapped and Karen took the single and Abby and I took the double.
Okay. And so what did you all use for your tow on the kayaks?
Abby, you want to speak to that? A little bungee with some carabiners.
Yeah, we have a non-static line.
A dynamic line?
Thank you. With beaners on either side of it that I actually just grabbed it from our gear bin. We typically use it as a foot tow, but we're able to kind of cinch it close enough that for the lake paddle, which was just straight across, we were able to be within, a couple feet maybe of each other. And I just held their line and was able to, we moved pretty well, given the conditions on the water.
Nikki also chose a really good line on the water. She had us go a little bit more left than we saw most of the other teams going. And I think in that she kind of got us out of some of the wind, and that was really helpful as well.
Yeah.
So what other, well, the next strategic decision that you all had to make then came at the canyon, right? So you get to the canyon and at this point, you've still cleared the course. You went and got all of those pro points on the big long bike leg and you come into the canyon and this is the next big decision point in terms of, optional, those pro points. So tell us what your thinking was there. You might want to, maybe you want to pull up the tracker again so people can see how this was laid out.
Yeah, I can do that. The way that the course was designed, and Steph, credit to you, because I know you had a hand in this part of it. The canyon had, 5 pro points, like virtual checkpoints in it. And then 3, but 2 like within the canyon that were mandatory. And both of those, plus the one at the bottom of it, could be accessed from above also. So 18 and 19 were 2 of the points where you could go in and out of the canyon. And then is this 20 down here? Was the end of the canyon. So you could go in and out there. So we made the decision to go in at 18 and travel down to 19 in the canyon and kind of keep track of our time. And that was all, all we had to go on was that stretch of canyon that we traveled, plus the time estimates for the rest of the course. And we moved, okay. I mean, I think we moved well enough in there. It took me a few minutes to kind of get my technical bearings. Karen said, "It's good you've been doing so much rock climbing because you should be able to do this well." And I was like, "Oh, right. I've been doing a lot of rock climbing. I know how to do this now." And then again, it's like so mental, right? And then kind of figured out that it was fine. But when we got to 19, we felt like we were really on the edge, and it had taken us 2 hours to get from the TA down to 19. And we decided that we probably shouldn't push our luck for the other virtual checkpoints. So we got out at 19, took the road and then a power line down, and traveled down actually kind of a sketchy, cliffy side hill to get back in for 20, and then ran around.
And so in hindsight, you all ended up having about 3 hours left? So
Yeah.
if we consider the time that it took you to run the road from 19 to 20 and then add in that 3 hours, what do you think?
So we've talked about this after the race. In hindsight, given the amount of time we had, it's possible we could have cleared it. It would have been tight. But
It
in the
sounds
moment,
like the canyon opened up a little bit more after
canyon
19,
opened up
but
a
we didn't
little.
know.
Yeah, we didn't know that the canyon would get a little bit better. The other thing is the race director had, the course estimates that he gave us for the remaining sections of the course. We ended up being a little bit faster than those, particularly the last paddle. He told us that that's going to be a 2-hour paddle for the fast teams, and it ended up taking us an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. But at that time when we're in the canyon, we have no way of knowing that section was going to be faster than what the race director predicted. And so we just had to go with the information we had, which was the course estimates for the remaining sections of the race. And we just gauged our time from 18 to 19 and thought, if we continue moving at this pace through the canyon, we're going to be really in danger of missing something at the end of this course. And there really is no option to miss something later in the course, right? With it being a linear course, we would have had to skip a whole section and then we would have lost tons of points. So we felt like we were right on that edge. And if we had stayed in the canyon, we might have been really, really tight to not finishing. And so we made that choice, in hindsight, maybe we could have done it, but with the information we had at the time, we thought we were really tight on time.
Yeah. And so Karen, what are your thoughts as far as the outline of the course, the sort of linear nature of the course? Were you pretty happy with that style of racing? Is it something you've done before that you enjoy?
Yeah, I really enjoy the course. I haven't done the expedition racing that Abby and I think Nikki's only done one, but I feel like compared to the rest of the team, I have a lot less race experience. And I just really enjoyed the course. I thought it was gorgeous to be out there. I like the shorter legs and switching continuously. I do like courses that have navigational choices and strategy. So I thought it was fun to get the bike whack in because that usually tends to be what our team is very strong on. But yeah, and I typically don't love a ton of biking. And I have to say, I actually really like the mountain biking. It was one of my favorite portions of the course. So yeah, it was a great course. Definitely worth the effort of getting out there.
Yeah. So Abby, what are your thoughts in hindsight on racing on an all-women's team?
I've been thinking about this a lot. I had so much fun. And in addition to kind of the mental challenges of technical stuff over the last couple of years, I've just struggled mentally with racing. I haven't been able to find the fun much over the last 2 years and have really been trying to figure out my relationship with the sport, and came into this feeling who knows, and didn't stop smiling for 27 hours. And I don't know if that's I've talked to Nikki and Karen, I've talked to Brent, and I've talked to Mary Chandler and just other friends, and trying to figure out why that was. And I don't know if it was the fact that we were an all women's team. Like, I feel like on one level, I feel like we didn't race any differently from how we would have raced with other teammates. And we wanted to do that going in, right? Like we wanted to race as hard as we would with any of our other teammates. We may have communicated a little bit differently. It wasn't anything like tangible that I could point out to you. You know, Mary said to me, she's like, maybe it was the lack of expectations or the lack of like pressure going in. You know, as an all women's team, people are going to think that you're not as strong a team. And maybe that was it, maybe just like kind of freeing myself of my own expectations. Though I think we all had pretty high expectations for ourselves too. So that's like a convoluted answer to your question, but I would love to race with Nikki and Karen again. And I would love to race with our guys as well. I'm still wrestling with it. I'm still trying to figure out like what made it such a really, really wonderful 27 hours.
What about you, Nikki?
I had so much fun. Yeah, I would echo a lot of what what Abby said. We had so much fun out there. I think I went into it, yeah, very much expecting to push as hard and race as hard as I would on any co-ed rootstock team. But something about racing with Abby and Karen, and I just felt like we were kind of on the same page, and none of us was going to be stronger than anybody else. And so I felt like we had a really good dynamic of being able to help each other out and, you know, switch on, you know, pass off some weights, or, you know, I'm going to tow this person here. And now, you know, now Karen's the strong one, so we'll give her some weight. So I think we had a really good dynamic of just kind of everybody being on the same foot. And so that we could kind of push through as a team and really work well as a unit and help each other out when people are going through highs and lows. And yeah, I think we just like communicated really well with our expectations and how things were unfolding during the race, decisions that we wanted to make on the course, including coming out of that canyon. So we were really kind of all in it together, and it was a lot of fun.
So do you feel like you learned some things about yourself as a racer doing this race that you're going to be able to take over to your co-ed racing experience? And do you feel like you're going to be a better teammate now on your co-ed teams because of what you've learned about communication and some of these things you're talking about from this race?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we did well together that we don't necessarily do as a broader unit is just like talking through how everything is going in the moment. Like we had a moment on the last paddle where things got kind of tense. As Amanda said, the water was kind of spicy and we were tired, and like we just weren't like gelling in the same way. And we looked at each other and we were like, guys, we've worked too hard to have this amazing experience and to put ourselves in this position to let it all fall apart now. And I can't remember another time that I've said that with a group of teammates. Not that it wasn't true at other points, but like just naming that out loud. And I think that there was a level of intention with the way we approached the course, that if I can figure out what led to that, I would love to be able to apply to other team dynamics or team experiences.
I think for me,
Yeah.
it's a lot like every race I try and come away with like something I learned, and it's usually a little bit about hydration or nutrition. So one of the things that stuck out for me, there is the one in particular, when we're talking about me being on tow, I think I hadn't had enough water. I thought I was sipping on my Camelback, and when I went to refill it, I drank maybe a half liter in, what was that? So we did the mountain trek and then the bike. So in about 6 or 7 hours, I'd only had about a half liter of water. And Abby gave me her water bottle filled with Noon, and that kind of pulled me back in. But it was that moment of like, I hate being the weak one on the team. I hate having to be on tow or someone carrying my pack, but I was able to do it and not feel bad about it. Like they were just so accepting of it. And it was just kind of hysterical to see little Abby like with her 2 packs on, like going like crazy on the mountain bike. And it was just like hard to take it too seriously at the moment. It was just kind of like, man, these ladies are awesome. And then like looking at Nikki and seeing people kind of on the ski map trails, a lot of people were looking to Nikki for what choice she was making. And I just felt so proud of them the entire time. And it was just really cool to like be filled with pride for an entire race of your teammates. And it's not that like, I don't usually feel that way about the rest of the team. I mean, obviously Rootstock has a lot of really talented teammates, but I can't say I've ever felt a deep sense of pride the entire time I was racing. And that's what I felt this race. And I think that's what was different for me.
That's a really great way to say it, Karen. I felt the same way.
Yeah, I would say multiple times throughout the race, like some variation of these words came out of somebody's mouth. Guys, I'm just so proud of us right now. And I'm not sure that we've had that had kind of that camaraderie so much in other lineups. So it was a lot of fun just being like, guys, we're doing awesome.
Well, we were all super proud of you. I can tell you that. I was super proud of all of the all-women teams. I know I posted already in the group about how proud I was that there were no rules of travel violations, and you all made what was the right decision on this one route choice that, you know, okay, it was a, 6-minute difference, but still, like, at all these different little points, like, we're seeing all of you make these great decisions, and you all just crushed this course, and it was amazing to watch. And it was a real pleasure to see all of the women's teams go out and be super successful, whatever their different goals were. I think everybody was super successful, and that's what this Women of AR group was founded to do. And so it's really nice to see that all coming to fruition.
Hey, Stephanie, did you hear about the last bike leg, the little women's encounter we had?
No, what was this?
Abby or Nikki will probably be better telling it.
No, go for it, Karen.
So I always pronounce it's barf beef.
Bar.
Okay, so we're on this. The funny thing was like overall the last portions didn't take us as long, but I think the bike was a little bit more challenging than we were expected. And we're all tired, it's towards the end of the race. And I think we thought that this end bike section was going to be a really easy, pretty direct route. And we get to this small like canyon, and we can't figure out how to get around it. Like we can either go really far out to the road and add on extra miles. And Nikki is insistent that we are not adding the extra mileage. And they happen to be there right with us. And so we decided as two teams working together to pass the bikes down into the canyon and then pass them back up. And it was just so fun to be towards the end of the race right there with them at the moment. They were so helpful to us because they were a little bit taller in stature, so it made it a little easier to pass the bikes. And we were very grateful for their help at that moment.
That's very cool. Yeah, Annie Lake
really
is like
cool.
6 feet tall. She's who you want on your team when you're having to climb
Yeah,
up a
I
cliff
said
with your
that to
bike.
her. I was like, you guys are giving way more than you're gaining in this situation.
That was a
Here,
fun
have
moment
a
of
Snickers
all
bar.
the women working together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Annie kept being, women power. It was great.
Very cool. All right, well, so we're a little over an hour. I wonder, I'll open up the floor here. I haven't seen any more questions come up in the chat, but I wonder if there are any other questions that people have or some comments. I see Sherry Himes is on here and some other people who were
Hey guys.
in the race.
Sherry.
Hey.
Sherry.
Hey guys. I'm at work, so I said, oh, this is happening. I got a break, so.
Sherry, how was your course? How did you enjoy nationals?
Oh, it was fun. Oh, I loved it all.
Good deal. And now
Yeah.
you were racing with Fragile Flowers, right?
Yep. Nice girls. Yeah. I loved it. I loved the biking. The paddling was really cool. It was great.
Was this the first time you've raced with Fragile Flowers?
No, I raced with we raced in Oregon. That was the first time, I think. Oh no, I think I did a Crooked Compass with Olga, and then raced Oregon and did a race in Maine, the 24-hour with them. So yeah. And yeah, I think that I think Olga and Shay had a really good time too. I think they really liked the biking. They were, a little nervous about it, but once we got out there, they were really I mean, I think they really rode a lot more than they thought they would. So it was a really good experience.
Good deal. So
Sherry,
I
this
see
is Shay.
Shay
I'm
on the
I'm here
call.
too.
Oh, who's there? Shay?
Hi, Sherry.
Hey, Shay. Hey.
I had a lot of fun. You're an awesome teammate.
Oh, no, you are too, hon. No, it was great. And yeah, and the bike, and it was fun because at one point we were biking and I'm like, girls, just stay on my line. Let's keep ride down that, that second bike, the third bike, second. And we passed a team of 3 guys walking their bikes. And it was pretty funny because we just kind of like rode. It was a pretty technical section. And the girls were right behind, we were right all together and just bounced right past them. And it was fun. They looked a little surprised.
That always gives you a little boost, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Shay,
yeah.
How valuable is it having an experienced rider right in front of you who won't run off and leave you that you can follow?
I loved it. I love, like, it really helps me to watch someone's line and watch how their bike handles the rocks and the drops and everything. And it sort of gives me confidence, like, okay, Sherry and Olga went over this. It's physically possible. I can go over it too. I really enjoy it. I learn a lot riding behind experienced riders.
Yeah, it's one of the best ways to learn. Like, other than going to a mountain biking camp, like the way I learned to ride a mountain bike, I never went to a camp. I learned to ride from a woman who is a good friend of mine, who is a talented rider, who took me out and let me follow her. And it's absolutely critical, if you're the better rider on your team and you're wanting your teammates to stay close and ride the same stuff you're riding, it is critical that you not take off and leave them. Because as soon as you
Exactly.
take off and you're out of sight, guess what? Their confidence totally goes to crap and they're not going to ride nearly as much. If they can see you do it and you're right in front of them, they're going to do so much more and ride so much more, and your skills just improve so quickly if you've got someone who has the patience to ride in front of you like that. So that's awesome, Shay, that you've got Sherry there who will do that for you. And
Yeah,
No,
it was great.
it was fun. Yeah. And it's just, I think that was really like a highlight. Everybody's like, we're riding this. And it was great to see everyone just really enjoying something that they were kind of dreading a little,
Yeah.
so, and you can do it.
good deal.
Yeah.
And nobody got hurt.
I was amazed how little of that course was on actual roads. I was really impressed. So I think that just made it that much more fun.
Yeah, it's enviable. We pave everything in Kentucky. I blame Mitch McConnell. All those federal dollars go to paving every little tiny cow path in Kentucky. It's awful. All right.
Wow.
We really appreciated the 4 miles of pavement we got coming downhill before the waypoint to go back up to the TA where you were, Steph, with the ramen.
Oh yeah.
That little downhill was really nice. The uphill, I got a little winded. My body needed a break. Like, I can't sit anymore.
No. And I'm so proud of those Rootstock girls. Oh my gosh. We saw them. So we were going down into the canyon to get the point, and they were coming hiking up, and just seeing them was just such a like a mood lifter. It was great. It was great seeing them out there.
For us too, Sherry.
Oh yeah. No, it is. It's great. Very proud of all of you.
All right, ladies. I'm
Okay.
gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Great. Thanks, Steph, for everything. It was so great seeing you there.